I'm not sure which way I should film. I'm not sure the way I should live life. I'm not sure the way to make decisions. And at times I can look up to the sky and say, "What the heck, God?" And then other times I can see that I'm the reason for 90% of my struggles. And it's easy to delude myself until I can't anymore. Till the word becomes more and more apparent on how deeply it's speaking to me. Early on in my walk, I might have said that's not for me, but every word is applicable to me. Even the ability to fall into a reprobate mind. And that can happen at any level. It can happen at any level that I'm given over. That I become one of the people that said, "Lord, Lord." And then he say, "I never knew you." Paul makes a very clear point and decision in Corinthians when he says that he abases himself. He humbles himself. He judges himself. I think that's very important that we assess ourselves. And, sometimes it's very clear on what we've done wrong, and it's very hard to accept that. We're not off of the momentum of being excited to be a Christian anymore. We're growing in the faith and being real and mature. And with that comes ingesting and digesting the words in our deepest parts, and the parts that is the darkest corners, and the parts that we push away, and the parts that might not always be our fault, and the parts that are holding on to us so deep that we need God to become whole. We realize how impossible it is to take on this challenge fully. Yeah, sometimes we can strengthen it out, but truthfully, we need Jesus, we need God, we need him in every scenario of our lives. And this isn't something that's going to happen overnight, but we need to stay in a place of humbleness to need him, so that when we come to him, it's not like we need to go through this humbling process again. We need to stay in a place of humbleness, and it's going to be my goal and my plan to hold on to this idea as much as possible, looking at my weaknesses, because truly I am weak. I'm not good at always looking at the camera. I'm not good at always piecing together the greatest marketing scheme, or knowing how long I should talk and how little I should talk. And that's also where I can be very strong at, because of the God that is in me. It's important that through our weakness, through our troubles, through our tribulations, that we don't see ourselves as less than. We still see ourselves as worthy. If I'm living, then I still have a purpose, but I have to come to the throne of grace, and I have to come through it truthfully. I have to come to God truthfully. I need to work out my salvation with fear and trembling. The truth of the matter is that fear and trembling is needed because it keeps you honest. It's very easy to make mistakes in life or do something wrong and point your finger to God and say, well, and it comes to a point where you can't do that anymore. And I think that's where a lot of people leave their faith, and I'm coming to that understanding of more and more. And it's like, honestly, I can't even leave the faith if I wanted to. But I realize what God pushes every Christian and believer to is to a place of where we see our limitation. We see the end of ourselves. We see the crucifixion of ourselves. And I think it's very important that in this process that we don't shortcut anything, and that we even, embrace God's chastisement. We embrace the struggle and pain that might come from the consequences of our actions, in which, like I said, I'm not the best decision maker. And that's no excuse, because I'm imperfect. It's not a ticket to do whatever I want, because I'm imperfect. But I know that I am capable of doing that. I know that I am capable of doing the absolute worst, no matter how pure and genuine I can be at times, no matter how long I can stay and abstain from any sin or weakness or self-control, no matter how long I can fast, no matter how much I can profess Jesus. It doesn't matter if I'm not actually walking in it, if I'm not being true. Because one thing that people like to do is they like to put things on their walls in this world. They like to, put the deer they killed. They like to lay the cow on their ground, and they also like to declaw lions and take out its fangs and hold it as a trophy in their backyard and render it useless and say that it is no more what it used to be. And so as a Christian, that is hypocrisy. That is living a life, or speaking a life that you don't truly live. And truthfully, Paul tells us to walk in perfection. It's because there has to be a level of belief that I am able to walk in that which I am called to. And that although mistakes are possible, although my works are seen as filthy rags, there is an ability to walk in perfection. We have been guided from Old Testament to New Testament to now. We are, of course, the most challenged in this, but if we can recognize our free will, how evil it truly is, and if we can stay close to God at all times, we won't deal with this any longer. But we have to recognize that we're going to suffer no matter what. I'll suffer if I give in to myself, and I'll suffer if I don't. So I might as well suffer for something that's good, something that's going to be worthwhile. And, we'll just come with a little more suffering. I'd much rather not be numbed out than to feel the pain. And I recognize that from a place on the opposite side. And I can say that maybe that's God using me or using that situation. But the truth is, I'd much rather be living in a place of saying that I'm rejoicing the fact that I'm living my life outside of that life, and I don't know that anymore. But unfortunately, I have to bring light to the fact that, although I might even possibly put myself on a pedestal that I don't deserve, or as high as it is, at times, I see that this also can happen with anybody that's dealing with curses that is generational, or any ministers out there. Like, they're in such a high position, it's very easy for them to keep quiet and not pronounce the hypocrisy that's going on within them. If they've been at a leadership position for so long. I'm early in my faith. I'm a younger person. I don't really think I'm too young, but I'm about, I'm making my way to 23. And I'd like to be further ahead than I am. I'd like to be more mature than I am. I'd like to be more active than what I am, and more consistent. And I see God working that out, but I also see my impatience working on the other end, when I'm supposed to be filled with patience. I'm supposed to have the fruits of the Spirit, but I'm not truly living in it. So, I built myself a wall, and I built myself a prison, but I know that God shook down prisons and took them down. So that's what I'm hoping He's doing for my life. I'm hoping He's doing it for anybody who comes across this video and takes time to listen to my free thought, because I know it's very hard to live in this life and not really, you feel probably confused all the time. And this is projection. This is not, me saying God said. This is just pure projection. But I know that no temptation that's come to man is unknown. So somebody out there relates that You feel confused, but you feel as if you have all the answers at the same time. Or the answer seems just far and unreachable, and that's a part of, I think, what God is working in the impossible area. It's like before I get really, or when I get really zealous, I also have that possibility to get prideful and to look at my success. And it's okay, I think, to be satisfied in the good that you're doing, but there's also a place we need to come back to in humbleness, and always kind of recognize that we're no better than anybody, no matter how good we're doing in life, no matter if all the ducks are in a row and it seems as if you're the most important person in the universe, or if it seems like you're doing first, because we've seen so many lions be declawed, and we ask, what happened to these people? What happened to that? And it's easy to even judge instead of kind of looking like, well, the devil has a mission and we have free will, and the devil's attacking that very thing, and he's putting us in scenarios like being around the wrong company for too long and not being influential in that company and not holding to our value, because human nature takes over. I learned that 50% of our brain is meat. It's got a lot of fat in it. It's meat, it's nature. It's just kind of just building habits half the time. That's what it's doing. That's what half the brain is. That's what that meat is. It's a lot of building blocks, and it's layering, like literally in your brain. If you've formed a bad addiction or a stronghold, or just had something bad happen in your life, or habit, there's a layer that's being formed on these mental connections, and it's solidifying what is, and it's to a point where you need God. And I mean, if you're 3 years in and you become in a way alive to sin, it becomes alive, and you begin to recognize the necessity for it to be killed, for your flesh to be killed, and you recognize the heartbreak and turmoil. You recognize the pattern. You recognize how much more your brain is evolving to a new state of evilness, essentially. You want to find a way out, and at times I do like my humble approach more than I even like the person that's on the mountaintop, or maybe the person who thinks they've accomplished so much in life, like just in the sense like, oh, I've done this, and I've done this for such and such days, and I don't really think this, but it's what is kind of in the back of my mind, and I let a thought pass through instead of taking that thought captive. So I truthfully think that to change, it calls for a big, I'm gonna say a big change, a big turnaround, but it's not possible without Jesus. It's not possible. This is a simple gospel. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. Like, he's everything. And I think I just said that wrong. I think he's the light. But man, we gotta stay connected. We gotta be in prayer. We gotta be in silence, stillness. We gotta be awake early, and sleep early. saying these things, but it all comes back to Jesus. That's the only way we're able to do anything. It doesn't matter how many books I read. It doesn't matter how many people tell me what to do. All that matters is I come close to Jesus and I pray to him. And yes, of course, I do listen to other people and just the knowledge that they've received, and I can apply to my life, of course, but ultimately, I need to come close to Jesus. I need to allow suffering to take place, but, when I let that suffering happen, I need to come back to that place of obedience. That's just the ultimate thing we need to sustain. We need to sustain what it is that God has made us to be, and that's only through relationship with Jesus Christ. That's only with us being humble. That's only with us judging ourselves, like really judging ourselves, like really looking at what we do on a day-to-day basis, what we're thinking, how we're thinking, because it's very easy for ourselves to be exalted in our minds, just depending on who you are, what your past is, generationally. It's very easy. Yeah, it's very easy to put yourself in a different mind state, to put yourself above others, and you'll find probably the exact opposite reaction. Anytime we're trying to hold on to our life and push a narrative for ourselves, it's pretty believable for ourselves. We wouldn't be pushing it. But, I see it as a blessing that I am able to know where I'm going wrong, no matter how bad or annoying it is. It disturbs me, but, I get mad, not too mad. I ain't cussing, but I might let a word slip in my mind, and that's kind of a tricky thing where it's like, I can't allow that, because that's coming out the heart, and out the heart the mouth speaks. And sooner or later, a cuss word will slip. And, that's not the worst of my concerns, but it's still sin. So I know that I just need Jesus. The truth is, the meat part of my brain, the fat part of my brain, fat is good for my brain, and God does make us fat in a good way. And I think that's in the brain. It can make us knowledgeable. The mysteries, all the secrets is next to him. It's not on YouTube. Although I may possess some sort of knowledge because I do connect to him, I ultimately know that anything I know is from him. And he's just using me, and all I ask is that it gets the correct people that it does. And, maybe it's just for myself to hear and play back. But maybe one day it's for more than just me, because I know I can see how somebody would want to quit at where I'm at and say nothing makes sense. Everything that seems good turns into bad, and you just have to kind of roll with the punches, even if it's self-inflicted. Recognize your wrongs, and ultimately decide you hold the keys to change your life, and it's up for you to turn it. God, oh God, he's always working to turn it around. He's always working a way out, and being a Christian can be pretty embarrassing if I'm being honest. I'm just, I've messed up a lot, and probably people see, or I see, and it's just embarrassing to live this life and I not do anything about it. So I know the only way I can avoid the most suffering is just by going to Jesus, and I might get the most suffering, but it's the best way. So like I heard today, it's either 40 days or 40 years. So I think I'd much rather go 40 days and struggle there versus being in the desert. I'd much rather get to my promised land. So that's gonna be my commitment for the next 40 days. Is just to have a relationship with God, pray 3 times a day, nothing more than 10 minutes, but let it all just be real. Let it all just be intentional. Probably just gonna start deleting social media. I think that's probably one step. Second step is, guarding myself, guarding my eyes, hands, ears, all that has been leading me to backwardness and being used by the devil, I think can be partially put away. That way I can, come back to humbleness, and hopefully I can hold on to this humbleness for a long, long time. And, I can look back and, not have a laugh, but, understand that what I'm going through should not be for nothing. It should not be for nothing that I suffered myself and ruined myself through my own bad action. So the day that I grow out of being a cub to a lion, hopefully I'll write more than I'll speak, but I want the lesson to be known. That's all I have. Finding a relationship with Jesus. Close your eyes and meditate on his word and believe that he's the one that's going to ultimately deliver you to that. And it's not going to be me, anybody else around. Nobody's going to be able to help you. Nobody's going to be able to bring your head, pick you up. And, if there is somebody like that, that's great. But ultimately, that person's not going to always be there. The old person's always not going to always have the right words. That person's not always going to have a strong hand themselves. This life is very fragile. And no matter how strong you are, how powerful you are, how great you look and seem, we are all fragile. We are all able and possible to fall short. But we ultimately got to do something about it. And I think the quickest way to that is sacrifice. But with sacrifice, there also comes another side of it where we can fatigue ourselves. So we ultimately, after we find ourselves out of extremity, we need to come to a place of realness and have a plan to sustain something that's real and legit, and work our best to maintain that relationship and that connection, and to just see the best way to go forward in this Christian walk. We're running a race of endurance. This is not a race that's sprinting. This is a race of endurance, enduring to the end. So it's longer than just a normal endurance race. We're enduring to the end. So with that being said, have grace if you find yourself trying your best and you fall short. If you don't, judge yourself correctly and go to God, speak to him until it makes sense. Speak to him until you find yourself humble, and you find him humble as well. He's always going to be humble. He's not going to force anything on you, but he's going to be humble on what he's saying. So it's important that we fear him and his power, and we respect him, and we don't harden our hearts so bad to him in which we destroy ourselves. We gotta be grateful for his forgiveness. We gotta be understanding of every part of our walk may not be what God had designed, but it might not be the end all. And so I'm gonna leave it at that. If I talk anymore, well, I don't really mind talking. I feel the Spirit is laying on me and comforting me and helping me get through this, despite my trouble and my frustration with my own self and my own decision. I do find peace in doing this, so I'll continue to stay up on this and as much as I can, and continue to just keep myself humble and keep myself grateful and keep myself connected to the one and only person on earth. Well, the one and only person who can truly lead me to live the rest of this life the way that it's designed to be lived. So for all my saints, God bless. If you're up at the time I'm up, I hope that you're given rest in whatever you're in, that you may wake up full of vigor to set the momentum, that Jesus is the focus, and that everything else is rendered less important. Take things moment by moment, day by day, and I hope that you'll be able to find your promised land in what seems like the blink of an eye. When you're working hard, time seems to pass. So I hope that when you're working hard to seek His kingdom and righteousness, that everything else will be added on to you as it says in His word, and that you may be reminded of that and remember that in the heat of any moment. You may be able to remember His word and have peace in His word, and any painful experiences may be limited unless it serves the kingdom. That you may be willing to sacrifice, but before sacrifice, you're willing to be obedient. In Jesus' name, amen.